session recording be made available?
It's
Or
already available. It's already available.
okay,
Rashmita will post the link um, once. I mean, she'll post the link in the chat while we start the session as well.
okay, that's great. That's good.
Good evening and good afternoon to all of you uh, from wherever you are joining us today. Before we start today's session, please do feel free to check in using the details which are on the screen. The link and the event ID are both needed. This will give you access to additional resources and information about the event that we are running on the reactor, which are around similar topics to today's session. Also, you will be able to access all the links that our speaker will refer during the session. I will be sharing the link on the Q&A section soon. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Rashmita and I'm the event planner for Microsoft Reactor Bengaluru. Today we are back with Azure Fundamentals for Developer Part 2 session. In case if you have missed the first part, I will share the recorded session link with you all in the Q&A section. The session will run over the next 60 minutes, including Q&A. The session is being recorded and will be made available to watch on demand on the Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel. I will share the link to our YouTube channel in the Q&A section shortly. Quick word on our code of conduct. We display this at all Microsoft Reactor events that we run, and it's really just a reminder to be aware of others. The key thing to take out here is to be respectful of other people's views, understanding of differences, being kind and considerate in the way you engage. The chat will be open throughout, and we do encourage you all to participate. Also, please keep your mics muted during the session. I would now like to welcome Vivek Sridhar, our speaker for today's session. Vivek is a tech enthusiast and an open source contributor with around 15 years of experience in the software industry. He works at Microsoft as a Senior Developer Product Marketing Manager. But for now, I'll hand over to Vivek to begin the session. Over to you, Vivek.
Thank you, Rashmita. Just sharing my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Hey all, thanks for joining in. And as Rashmita said, this is the second part of Azure Fundamentals for Developers, and basically Azure for Developers. And as I discussed previously as well, in the part one, we did discuss about how resources are deployed on Azure from a how I mean from a security perspective, etc. Right? We also discussed the resources, what is a resource group, subscription, etc., and how it all fits in. And then obviously the discussion was or on around deployment of apps in Azure, from an app service, from containers to container registry um, to the Azure Kubernetes service. So in this specific session, we will focus on serverless and Azure DevOps. So one of the compute which developers are mostly will use is the serverless compute for building apps faster and other things, and we'll see why it is such an important thing. And I will also go through the at least 8 use cases of serverless, and we will also see a couple of demos and see the how DevOps fits in into all these ecosystem. Um, so people who don't know me much, I'm Vivek. A bit of development, bit of DevOps background, product and architect, helping developers and startups to build applications and basically architect it right. So that's my background. So this particular slide we already discussed in the part one as well. I just want to spend some time, for people who have joined, into the part two series, without going to the part one. So even before digital transformation happened 15 years back, everything was on-prem, and servers and storages and everything was in a specific location. And obviously, when digital transformation started, when everything started getting onto the cloud, infrastructure as a service came into picture, and through internet we were able to access these servers and storages, and build on applications onto these servers. But then uh, obviously it was accelerated. Digital transformation was accelerated with OS and softwares coming onto the PaaS layer, and a lot of tools from a developer perspective coming to the PaaS layer. And obviously it solved a lot of problems, but still there were issues around sizing of your applications, what apps, and scaling of your apps, etc. So the next set of development came in terms of serverless compute. So it's basically how do you build your apps, focusing on your business logic, and taking your focus out of the infrastructure management, because it's all taken care by the cloud service provider, the serverless compute provider, and you're only focusing on your uh, business logic there, right? And so I don't want to go in depth with this. We have already discussed this. It's more from how, and there is in-depth discussion of what I discussed in the previous slide. So I'll not spend much time. You can glance through it. There are a couple of things which is there. Obviously, each from on-prem to infrastructure as a service, there is obviously it is solving a couple of problems for us. And then when you come to serverless, is where you are only focused on building your applications, like how you are going to architect your app, and focusing on your business logic, and building the app for scale, right? So this is where next generation app development is, and that is the reason why I wanted to go deep dive into this, not covering it in the first part of the session. And so many of you will have this question, right? What is serverless? Uh, so serverless is not obviously like there is no server at the back end. There is a server, and it is more of an abstraction for developers, right? It is like an infrastructure is abstracted from developers, and developers are coding and just pushing the code, and not really worried about scalability, availability, reliability, performance, and even the security part of it, right? You are just worried about your business logic, building your logic, and pushing that code to the cloud service provider, and cloud service provider taking your code and running it, and making sure the code is available for consumptions and for your transactions, etc. And why it is very easy to build? It is because of an architecture of event-driven architecture. So everything is working in terms of um, events. So your code is built for a trigger. So it is basically only when some event happen, there is a trigger for this specific specific code to run. So very simple example which I give here is like your OTP service, right? You request for an OTP, and that's when an event happen. And when request for an OTP happen, the a trigger happens, and a trigger is called, and then there is an OTP sent to the users, right? So it's a very simple example, and that is whenever you are requesting something, that is when your compute is used. So that is where you're paying only for the compute resources you use when when something is triggered, right? So don't worry about there is no server at the back end or something. Don't keep that notion in your mind. the most important thing we need to focus on is your code, and obviously rest is taken care by the service provider, and it has to fit the model of um, event-driven architecture. And obviously you're reducing the cost by only paying what for use, right? Whatever you're using, you're paying for it, right? So there are obviously a lot of benefits of using uh, using the serverless. So serverless is not, it's just a computing model. So these are the benefits of the serverless. One is obviously you are focusing. We have already discussed about it. You're focused on business, and obviously it's about efficiency. Efficiency is sorry. Any anyone had a question? No. Okay. So it's also about efficiency, right? And it's like there is no fixed cost. It is obviously the cost is varying, and it is varying only based on your consumption. And also the most important thing about your development is the code which you develop locally, you can test it locally, and also deploy it to the cloud. The same code you can deploy to the cloud, and you can easily manage it in the cloud as well. So it's easier to get to market and drive your business transactions, and it is obviously flexible. When I say flexible, say for example, you're building a microservice architecture. One of the reasons why you build a microservice architecture is to have, have not to interact, build an intersection between two different applications and try and make it as much as independent. So one is obviously, you have one app which is having Python code, and the other app might be using Java code as well, right? You might think that the other app which I have to build have to be on Java or something which will solve certain problems. So you can have this flexibility if you're using functions while building your microservice architecture, where all different kinds of programming languages can be used to drive your application, and also your team is diverse. Some people might be interested in building with Python, and they are more of Python developers, and there's Java developers. They can use Java for different set of things. So you can have mixed set of developers within your organizations as well. So one of the flexibility, right? And I just want to talk about the Azure Functions. What is Azure Function? So serverless is just a computing model which is there. Azure Function provides a programming model for you to do the serverless, you to act, you to consume the serverless as part of this, right? So what it provides is just a second. I think somebody uh, can someone go on mute? I think someone is okay. So what does Azure Function mean is very simple. It's a programming model on top of the serverless computing. So you can use this programming model, which we provide some kind of built-in triggers and bindings and other things which you might require to develop your application. And then there is obviously, as I told you, you can locally debug your code and deploy it to the cloud. And obviously, hosting flexibility, I don't want to go into that. There are a couple of things which you can see, and we'll see a demo of this, how this programming model will help you to drive the serverless compute for your application. And and so net, it's about focusing on code, not really doing any kind of plumbing work. It's kind of there is no infrastructure to manage. So as a developer, you don't have to manage the infrastructure, and the scaling part, the reliability, the availability, the performance, the security, everything is taken care by the cloud service provider, and there is obviously no wastage of resources, which we used to use, when we used to do this, when we have VM as a, as a strategy, right? So you are only paying for what you're using. So that's the whole idea about using serverless. So this is how it works in Azure. Uh, in Azure Functions. So you have a trigger, you do a trigger. It could be a lot of different triggers. We will see what are some couple of triggers which we have. And then there is an input binding where there is obviously you can bind to any kind of database, Cosmos DB, various other database services which is there, and you can obviously play around with the data, and data can be used as an output binding. When I say output binding, it can be third-party integrations. It can be a simple data updation, or it could be just processing the data for the end user as well. So this is how you can use a kind of function, and obviously a function is only a simple piece of code. Okay, so it's kind of so you're not supposed to build a lot of things into one single function. A function is supposed to do one activity. So if you're writing a Python function, or if you're from Java world or anything, each function used to do only certain work, right? And you call that to do some couple of activities, and probably one activity as well. So that's where a function is efficient. And you have to think from your architecture perspective as well, how to design this specific function to get a maximum out of the serverless computing. So I'll not go into too much into slides, because slides are just for understanding. I'll go for the demo now, and I'll show you how to get started with the functions, and how to build a simple function and deploy the function into the Azure. And then we'll come back and see some eight use cases of functions, and how you can really make use of it, which will help you understand where and how you can use these functions for scalability, right? So let me go back and start with building. So I have the Visual Studio Code. I already have installed the Azure Function extensions, and Function Core Tool extensions, and also Function Core Tool is installed on my laptop. It's a CLI capability for you to work with the function. This is the programming model. When I talked about programming model, so we have a serverless compute engine, but this is on top of that. We provide you a programming model where you can make use of to drive the Azure interaction, or to make use of that serverless computing, right? So let us start with this. So what you will do is you will create a new project. So it's here. This is the place where you can just go click, create a new project. I'm using Python. Now this is it's pretty straightforward. I'm using one, and this is the trigger which I talked about. So this is very important. So it could be HTTP trigger, or it could be a time trigger, blob storage. Blob storage is, again, it's an object storage of Azure, right? So where the storage is more from uh, you know storing an object and accessing it over URL. And then there is Cosmos DB trigger. Whenever there is an update in Cosmos DB, you do a triggering activity. These are durable functions. Durable functions are advanced functions to where stateless functions, these to stateful functions. So keep in mind, there are most of these functions are stateless, right? You're just triggering something, and it is going and doing some activity and coming back and replying to that trigger. But durable function is more from stateful functions, where you want to have the state and go from one function to another function and drive that conversation, and make sure that you save the state of the function and then stitch it together. So that is durable function. It's kind of advanced. And again, I talked about event triggers, the where you do a OTP request or something, these event triggers, event hubs, and queuing storage, all these things will come into picture. So we will see the use cases, and when I talk about use cases, some of these triggers will show up, and we can obviously discuss it more. So for this specific thing, I have just used HTTP trigger. HTTP trigger is nothing but whenever you request, do a request over HTTP, you will be able to access this service. Okay, and let us give it a name. My app, um, my py app. Okay, and let me enter. So this is more from function to function interactions, admin interactions, and you want to have anonymous, that is anybody can use this, so anybody can access this function. So that is from a security perspective, and you can see it is already giving you the most important thing, right? So whenever you create a new project and create all the things, the code is here, it's getting here updated. Okay, let me show you the code. Okay, let me go back to the where I have created the function. So this is where the function has created. It's on my laptop, and it's on local, and you can see that it is giving me a structure of Python, because I did choose Python as a programming language. So this is a structure of Python, and if you see requirement.text, if I just cat this, you'll see Azure Function is one of the modules which is installing, right? So it is like you can provide all the modules here. And let me go back and show you this. So if I go to my app, you can see some data and init file already created for you. So basically it's nothing but a Python structure, right? So if you create a Java, or if you create anything else which was in that list, it creates that folder structure for you. So this is how you can accelerate development, right? You don't really need to create everything from scratch, right? It's more from getting this all things set up, and you just go back and just give it like create a project, and you have the project up and running, right? So this is just a local. So I have a local project now, and I will use function uh, code tools to start this application. So what I'll do is I'll use the function CLI, so which I have already installed. So there are various things you can do. I'm just starting my local function. So when I give function start, my app is ready in the local. So if I go to this app, I'm just copying this, and sorry, let's come here, and when I click on this, so its function is available. So there is something like name is equal to something. If you give, it's like hello Vivek, something. You can see this, right? So now my function is available locally. So it's just an API HTTP trigger. So if I give something else as a trigger, then this trigger is again will be based on this. This code will be triggered only based on when some event happens on a couple of other things which we do, like Cosmos DB or any other database which is there, right? So let me go back to my VS Code, and let us push this to cloud, right? So it also depends on my network now, so please bear with me. um, Let me push this code to the cloud. So I've already have a Azure set up, my account is set up, everything is set up. So I'm just going to deploy function to the cloud. So this is the icon. If you see, this is the icon. And if you click on this icon, this is what you want to deploy. This is where your project is. And it will ask you to create a new function. Yes, I don't have any function out there. I'm going to create a new function. So I'm creating my PY app AZ on Azure, right? This is local and that is Azure, right? So let me, so this is the one which we were using, and any of these recommended, uh, you know, wherever the it's available, the region, you can select that region. So here is one region. Okay, so now the function is getting deployed to the to Azure, and you can see that a couple of things it is doing. It is creating app service plan. It is doing a couple of activities on top of this, and let's give it a minute. It takes some time, and it also depends on the network um, to deploy this. Just give it a minute. So while this happens, okay, um, Rashmita would have posted a link for you to go and check in. So, while that is happening, you can do it right now. The most important thing about that particular link is, there is content, whatever we are doing here, and there is a learning content. There is a complete modules available to for you to get started on functions, not just functions, on complete developer discussions, which we have had in part one and part two. Everything is available in that link. Just go to that link and provide that event code which he has provided, and just go and just go and give that event name and other things, and you will get the content. You will access the content. Okay, so it's pretty simple. Just give it a minute. It is just creating the function, but it also has to deploy. So this is local. You can see this local project. If it is after the deployment, it will be available here. It has to deploy still. It is just started. So let us go and open this window to see what is happening. So it's creating a package, it is deploying and other things. Also notice something, right? It is also providing application insights. So one of the important thing about using functions is this integration of monitoring application insights and other things, so that you can check the what is happening on your function at a very runtime, right? So you can easily see that. This is done. This is done. Syncing. Swing log. Done. Okay. Now if I click on this follow link and open, it's opening in Azure now. This is, if you see this link, right, this particular API which we built is now on Azure. So now it was so easy for me to drive the code. It is like I created some function. Probably we can also edit the code and make changes the way we want, and then just deploy it locally, and then go back and deploy it online, right? It's available right now for people to use, right? So that's that's the simplicity, and that's how fast it is to get to the market. So it's very easy to get your an application uh, to cloud, and you can if you go to the Azure and see all the resources, a couple of resources it would have created. There is my function app, and you can see there is resource app available, and it's available for you to use it. And you can also see what are the function apps deployed on top of that. And as I told you, right, there is a couple of things which has got enabled, which is applications insights and other things. So this is how we can deploy it. So it's pretty easy. And now what we will do is we'll go back and see uh, some of the examples. Okay, so some of the examples in terms of um, scenarios where you can use functions. Okay, so most important thing um, is web application backend. It's pretty used, and we have I also talked about this one of the example, but it is more from ordering, right? You online, uh, you order something at the online, and it gets processed, and data is stored in Cosmos DB, and the processing is through functions. So you can actually guess the trigger. It is not HTTP trigger, and if you see the trigger, right, it is more from a service bus trigger, right? It is not a HTTP trigger. And I mean, that is the use cases, right? It's not always HTTP trigger, but it is also more from understanding different set of triggers which is provided as part of the programming model of Azure Functions. Okay, so there is mobile application backend as well, which is more from understanding if you go out with your friends and um, you know uh, and you're requesting money from them after having lunch together, and you paid money and something like that. So there are a couple of different triggers which is there. One is obviously you are doing a HTTP trigger and storing the data in Cosmos DB, like who has to pay you how much and all those things. And then once the Cosmos DB is updated, there is a Cosmos DB trigger which is happening to send the notifications. Again, notification hubs is used for driving that conversations with your friend, like request money from your friend. So um, so if you see, there are different set of triggers are used in mobile applications to drive different kind of conversations and also business transactions, right? So that is one. And in an IoT industry as well, you have manufacturing unit, and couple of machines have IoTs, and one of the machines sends an anomaly, and it sends a data saying that there is some issue with the machine, and that is obviously is taken into the function. And then if you see, there is a logic app is used, and that is one of the highly used integrations with functions, where there is a process of message, and logic apps connects the third party tools with the functions to drive various business cases. And if you see in this scenario, right, there is Zendesk, which is actually taking the information from logic app and creating a request for repairing that specific machine which has some issue. So look at the use case. You have huge factories with machines, and IoT is sending data, some issue with only a specific machine, and that data is getting processed, and then logic app is actually going and creating a request in terms of device repair, and this is that machine is getting repaired through this kind of conversation, which is something really amazing. So obviously there is many use cases like conversational bot service. Basically it is to drive your, you ask for a request from a vacation planning, and it provides you the information. This is multiple function integrations, right? It's not different triggers, but it is multiple function integration that can be done. And also in healthcare industry, and this is an amazing use case as well, where you have PDF stored in a blob storage. As I told you, blob storage is a storage, object storage, where you can access these objects via an URL, and HTTP trigger happens whenever a storage is getting updated. When a PDF comes into the storage, blob storage trigger is triggered, and then it does the OCR. A very interesting one. If you don't know what is OCR, go and do bit of research. It is about extracting the data from the PDF and then storing it in a structured way in SQL database. And obviously, when you store something in a database, it should be query, right? You can query for information and drive a lot of different kind of information through this. So that is where healthcare industry usage comes in. So imagine the kind of different development is happening in terms of functions, right? And obviously real time streaming, and as you know, right, it's already we have discussed about this. There is a kind of data processing which can do and do a visualization of that data. So all the data which is coming in from various different apps and other devices or whatever it is, it can be processed, stored in the Cosmos DB, and obviously visualized in a different way. And obviously, um, automation scenarios, and SaaS applications where third-party integrations happen and other things is also one of the examples which we can take out from this too. So before I deep dive into Azure DevOps, anyone has questions, or else shall I deep dive into DevOps and come back at the end to take all the questions? Okay, let me complete Azure DevOps as well from a demo perspective, and then we will go into Q&A at the end. Here it is more important to understand DevOps. I'll not go deep dive into like what is DevOps and what is deploy, operate, monitor, planning, etc. So I just want to talk about the how things were and how DevOps has transformed and how it will help you in future as well in the ecosystem of a developer, right? Um, so while I was in IBM, we used to my first 6 years or something. We used to deploy almost like 6 months once or 8 months once into production, or that is the period we used to take to release a product. And obviously there were so many cycles, so many different set of testing scenarios and various other things which were supposed to be done. So when a developer pushes the code, um, it gets tested only after 3-4 weeks, and then feedback is given to the developer after 4 weeks, 4 to 5 weeks sometimes. And obviously we all know, right, developer would have forgotten what he had done to fix that code, and why did he really use specific things to fix a specific problem. So it was all very difficult to drive um, uh, to drive the applications and to scale the applications, and also with quality for the customers, right? And obviously it used to take that much time to go to the market. And slowly, when DevOps was emerging and how it was emerging, it was solving couple of problems by automating couple of things which we were doing. And when I moved into a different product, while in IBM itself, uh, it all changed, right? It was all agile. It was more from planned deployment. Every 2 weeks there was a deployment, and there were many things which were happening in terms of in an automated way. And obviously 2 to 3 weeks production deployment were happening, and there were changes made, and developer used to get feedback pretty fast. And obviously, I'm talking about pre-production deployment. Obviously, production deployment in an enterprise takes 3 months. Um, so they were, very interesting scenarios there, right? And then when I moved to HCL, it became much faster. Every 2 weeks we used to deploy and get those code into the production. But when I was in startup, which was in BlackBuck, the deployment were like every day 4 p.m. we used to do the code deployment to the production. So if you see the evolving, right? So 15 years back, so much time to deploy to production, to my BlackBuck days where everyday deployment to the production, it has changed. And the reason why, it is more important to understand is, um, DevOps is not about just about tools. It is also about people. It is also about process and how products are driving delivery, and it is also giving quality to the end user, right? It has to be delivered in a quality way, and it increases the velocity, right? And also helps the customer, help the user and customers to drive their business faster because you are delivering fast to them. And a lot of things, DevOps is changing uh, in terms of business and value it can provide. So so keep this in mind, whenever somebody is talking about DevOps. um, don't think that it's always about tools. You have to understand DevOps is a process. For example, you know when when we in Black Book, right? Um, it was like, people were pushing code to production every 30 minutes and breaking the production and other things, right? So there was supposed to be a process. It is not just pushing code to production. You have to break them out and build a process around it. So that is the most important thing. And going to the next slide, right? There is three different pillars of DevOps, right? So one is obviously understanding continuous integration. So whenever you push a code, uh, it has to be tested, and it has to be built, and you need to see how fast you can get a feedback of your code as a developer. So this is something which is very important. And then comes the DevOps, continuous deployment and delivery. So when I talk about continuous deployment, it is more about uh, entire process of DevOps, right? When you push the code, there is continuous integrations, then there is a deployment to developer environment, and then there is deployment to QA environment, and then system integrations or integrations, and going into pre-production and production. There is nobody is actually looking at different things. It is all automated, and the code is going from a developer's laptop to the production. That is continuous deployment. And when I talk about continuous delivery, um, it is more about control deployment to production. And obviously there is something called as infrastructure as code, where you also can bring out infrastructure, build an infrastructure and use infrastructure. And then there is very important thing about your product development is you have to learn what is happening in your application, and you have to monitor. So it's not about just building code and getting it out. It is also about understanding what is happening in your code. It is also about monitoring your code, etc. Right? So this is something you need to keep in mind when you build a DevOps strategy. So it's about getting information back to developers as soon as they commit code, and building a process around how code has to be delivered to production. And obviously it is broken down into infrastructure as a code, delivery or deployment, how you want to take it. And once the code is there in the production, what you are tracking on that specific code. Are you learning? Are you monitoring? Uh, do you have an information that it will fail at certain scenarios? Do you have an information that it might fail in certain place, or something will have go wrong in futuristic when something really comes into picture? So all this information you need to keep an eye on and automate all these things. Interesting concept, right? So that's how DevOps is built. So you make sure that you keep all these three different strategies in mind while you build it. So I will not go deep dive into each of these things and bore you with. I'll just run through it, and you can access all the information about DevOps, azure.com/DevOps, and you'll get all these things. There is an amazing book available out there specifically for DevOps, learning about DevOps and other things. So I think you can go and download that book. So boards are nothing but simple, Cabana board, or your agile boards, which you can create your task and other things. So this is something which everybody does today. And CI/CD pipeline is nothing but you're building a pipeline. We will see this. I've already built a pipeline. I'll show you how code actually go from one environment to other environment, and how just pushing a code from your GitHub, how it works. And then there is Azure repos. It is nothing but a Git repo you're going to use. And then there is test plan. Obviously, this is to make sure that you are reaching continuous deployment. So, it's very important you automate as much as possible so that you reach the continuous deployment. But, unless and until that is a strategy, you have to make sure that you have n number of tests which is helping you drive these things, right? And there is Azure Artifacts, obviously, where you can store the artifacts and make use of artifacts and share these code artifacts to make sure that you, from a pipeline perspective, different pipelines or different environments can make use of different packages which is required. So let me go back, and I'll not spend time on the slides. Instead, we will see how to. So this is my Azure DevOps account, and this is how it looks. And these are the places where I've created a project, and these are places where you can see overview board. You can create different boards, and you can see work items on yourself and pipelining, releases, and test plan, artifacts, deployment groups, and other things. So I'll not go into each of these, but I want to show you continuous delivery and continuous deployment, the difference between these two, and how exactly it fits in when you build something, and how exactly it will look like, right? So this is the release. If you see, there is release 21. Keep an eye on that, because as soon as I push a code on GitHub, right, the release will be 22. The way I have structured this specific release is, um, you can see this. So whenever there is a code push which is happening onto my GitHub repo, you can actually see it pushes the code to dev environment, and from dev environment, there are a couple of environments where the code is going, and obviously the code can be shared with artifacts and other things. And then there is a gated deployment. That means it is waiting for all these three things to finish to go into the production pre-production environment, and then there is production environment. Obviously it is controlled environment. When I say controlled environment, it becomes a continuous delivery. Okay, so let us go back to my code and VS Code, in fact. So I'll open my code, which is for the demo. Okay, no worries. Okay, this is my code, and I have some code in a donor project. So don't worry about the code. I'm just typing something. This is continuous delivery versus continuous deployment. Okay, now I'm going to save this. Okay, now it's saved. There's a made we have made changes to it, and let us go back to release, and you see 21. Saving does not change anything. We will have to go back to the CLI and go to my repos, and then go to demo project. Okay, project is ready. Then I say GitHub status. There is change. I'll add this change. I'll do again a GitHub status. I'm more used to doing that, right? So I'll just go back and do GitHub commit. We'll add this. This is to test delivery. Continuous delivery, it is done. So now GitHub status will give you push, git push origin master, and this is where I want you to take a look at us 22, and then we will just push this code. Now this code is pushed to GitHub, and release 22 is started. So this is how DevOps work. I push something to the right set of branch. Here I'm pushing it to master branch. You can have CI branch or different branch. The moment I push the code to this branch, the code is getting deployed, and the code gets deployed and creates an artifacts as well while it is deploying it. It's on dev environment. Now you can see the same code is processed in performance testing, automated testing environments, and QA environments. So here again, while the job is running, you can run a lot of tests, a lot of things, unless and until it is not completed, it is not finished, and all the test has run and it has given the updated information. The test won't be deployed to the pre-production. Even QA has to be queued. Everything has to complete, right? So you can see automated test got succeeded. I'm just waiting for a couple of other tests. So from a DevOps perspective, right, think about this. A developer, a group of developers are pushing code to the GitHub repo on a specific branch, and that code is going into developer environment. And if this thing fails, right, it will send us the failure logs, whatever it captures, and share it with in an email telling that the deployment failed and these are the reasons why it failed. And we are pretty sure of which code which has gone in, right? If you go to this history, you'll see what changes has gone in. And if you go back to the pipelines, you will see this, right? So there is an artifact summary, right? It is showing this is the trigger, this is the number, right? This is the number where you can go back and trace, right? And you can see it is stopping at pre-production deployment. It is not going to happen because I have set it in such a way that it has to be a continuous delivery, right? All these things completed, but it is waiting for my approval, because without the approval, I cannot push the code. So when I approve this, code is getting pushed to pre-production. Okay, so this is what continuous delivery mean. There is gated, there's controlled deployments, and you can see, it takes some time. Uh, After this demo, we will see how this works as a continuous deployment, right? And we will make those changes to this pipeline. We will edit this pipeline and change the complete pipeline to be a continuous deployment. Like you push the code from your local environment and it straight away goes into the production. So give it some time. While it is happening, let's go back here. So you can see, where the deployment's happening, which one is associated with from a GitHub perspective, GitHub ID, and let's go back here. This is it is queued now, so it is getting deployed. Let's give it a minute. So now again, I have a controlled way to go to the pre-production, but I also have a controlled way to go to the production. It's not just about one person approving it. You can have multiple people who can approve this. Okay, so there is a multiple approval, so multiple approving of this, right? And I've done this approval. Now it should get started. So I'll leave it here. It will. Anyways, we have seen this demo. Now remind me later. Okay. Now what we'll do is, this is testing again. Okay, I'll save this. I'll go back to my project, and what I'll do is git status again. It is to add git commit, testing this again, and git status. Now we want to push it. Git push origin master. So it is getting pushed. While this is completed, you'll see 23rd release has started, and it will go through everything. So while it goes through everything, please go back and make sure you check in and access all these content. There is Azure for developers modules which I have shared in that link. So make sure that you can go through that complete guide and all those stuff and modules, everything. So this should take a minute to. Oh, we made a mistake. We didn't edit. So let us go back and edit the release. Oh, now I can't. Sorry. This is edit. Oops. We have to edit. So let us edit here, and we will say no to pre-approval and save this. Okay. Redeployment condition, pre-approval deployment is saved. Okay, so it is saved now. So even for this, I'll disable it and save it, and done. So even if you see the history, comments coming in, options, pipeline, done. I've edited it. Cool. So it's done. So what we will do now is, sorry for the trouble, we will save this and GitHub add GitHub commit string GitHub status done in master. Cool. So 24 while this happens. I hope I have to cancel this. Okay. No need to cancel because it stays in the approval. Cool. So here is, I made a mistake of not editing it, but there is no gated now. We can easily see that how this will progress into directly into pre-production. I'll not wait for production. We'll just see how it goes into pre-production without having a gated deployment. Okay, going on. Just give it a minute. If you have any questions, you can type in the questions or you can ask me questions while this is happening.
Vivek, we have few questions.
Oh, we have few questions. And oh,
Yes.
sorry, I didn't go and check the chat. Oh, okay. There's so many questions. So, how to configure CI/CD for different environments in same release? Yes. So there is an environment which is available out there. You can go back and set up your environments. So here is it. So create an environment. So obviously it is always about creating different environments and using those environments in your pipeline. Each pipeline here is for one environment. So make sure you use that. It's always based on the release and other stuff. So there is an environment. What is durable functions and its roadmap and how different. So durable functions, as I told you, it is more of a stateful function. So if you have one function talking to another function, and you want to save the state of that function to reply back to something, so that is where the difference comes in. That is where durable functions comes in. What is the difference between the other pipelines and the release pipeline on the basis of the configuration? Other pipeline versus a release pipeline. Okay, the pipeline you create, it's more from, you're building, it's building wizard, and it's like, if you see this, when I create a pipeline, it will ask me getting started from GitHub and other things. So it's basically, it will go into my GitHub and other pick some stuff, but obviously, oops. Okay, so it's basically cloud hosted, and this is different. So this is a releasing, this is pipeline. So you can see this is pipeline. Pipeline is associated to a release. Release is a information. This is happening, this is running, but this is the edit. Whenever I go and edit, it goes and edit in edit pipeline. So you can see this is what we edited. So this is a pipeline. Got it? This is a release. So when I go here and say edit release, so it is about editing here. Okay. So you can also edit here, right? Edit task and other stuff. In CD release step in Azure DevOps for QA environment, what, I don't know why. Okay, what and how to add automated tests and performance tests? Is it part of GitHub code or something else? So it's basically, yes, GitHub code. You are pulling the code and running as part of the automated test. So it is basically a script which will you create whenever there is an installation or whenever you are pushing a new code into your environment. Either you will have the test scripts, on install, but nobody does that, right? I want to have updated test scripts, so it's always on the GitHub. So you will run an automation on that environment where you are pulling out the test scripts and running the test and pushing the results onto some place where we can view it, right? That's the way it is done. Azure Functions, with most functions being stateless. How do I perform authorization and authentication? It is available. So authorization and authentication, if you see, while I was creating, there were three options. One was anonymous and Azure function and also admin. So you can obviously do that. And also if you go into um, there is access control, there is app keys, there is authentication available for you. So you can all use all these features. If you deploy the function, you'll be able to do that. And Vivek has already answered that. Fine. Any more questions, or else we can go back and see what has happened to the release. So it's still queuing. I don't know why it is waiting for the deployment. Correct. This is completed, is it? Okay. So it is not asking for a moment. It is not asking for me to approve. So it is just queuing, and you can see pre-production and production available here, right? So code is getting deployed, and obviously it's taking some time to deploy. But there is no gate available here. I'm not approving anything. It is directly going to deploy it. Any more questions? Any more questions there? Any questions, or else I can show you the newsletter which we have. You can go to this link and you can sign up and get amazing set of content. Amazing, it is curated from local, it is curated from the Microsoft team, and it goes through a very rigorous process of choosing which content has to go into the newsletter. So make sure that you be part of this and get amazing content for yourself, right? Any questions? Can we get deployment builds like what? Like, you can unmute and ask question, no worries. I don't want to. Oh, you want to say you want to go back and deploy the previous code, you mean to say? Yes, you can do that. You have to change the GitHub, GitHub ID, right? Whenever you're doing a release, we saw that. If you open this, here is the ID which is there, right? So this is the commit which happened. So it is showing you the changes and commit and other things which came in for that specific deployment which we have done. This is only one file change, but you will be able to see different set of developers doing different file changes, and you can remove these whichever is not required and rerun the deployment. And definitely you can do that. but it is very costly. Pipeline structure can be changed in the pipeline. So when you go and edit pipeline, here is how you can structure change. So for example, this one, okay, this is, let's do this. So I have all the three. Let me remove QA from this and make a save. Okay, now if you see, I have removed the link. The dependency has gone from QA environment. So now pre-production environment is only dependent on the automated test and performance testing. So for all the content, right, for all these content, just go back. I'll just unshare this, and now Rashmita can share that slide. Now just go to that link and please provide that event code, and you get all these content. So you can go back and try all these content for yourself and see how you can uh, do various things, right? There are so many things to do here, because there is structured board, and there is there is a test plan, there is tasks, there is releases, and there is pipeline and environments. When I talk about different environments, it is altogether a different infrastructure, for complete infrastructure. It is not just one infrastructure which I'm talking about. So it's the pipeline which I'm showing now is very simple pipeline. In a real world scenario, it is way complicated than this, right? Because the value stream mapping which is happening here, right, from a developer's code, the branch where the developers are coding, to taking that to CI, building it into developer environment. When I say developer environment, it is not just one VM box. When I'm talking about developer environment, there could be, you can have a Elastic deployed, Elastic installation deployed, MySQL deployed, or different set of services deployed, or different applications deployed. All these things in different VMs and other things which might be spinning up using infrastructure as a code. It's not just even you have that environment ready for you to go back and deploy your code, right? So there is set of things, like all these things set up only for developer environment. And then there is QA environment, which is having a similar setup, might be different kind of machines, different size of machines, and different, again, performance testing needs a completely different set of machines and various other things. And then there is pre-production, which is exactly replica of production, might not be full replica, obviously, due to size and other things, which and also cost and various things which you will have in mind. And at the end of the day, the the production environment, which is completely different. So what I'm showing is just an example of how code can be pushed from different environment to another environment. But this environment mapping itself is a big thing. Okay, so very different, right? So make sure that you go through that book which we have provided, and it is also available. A wonderful book is available in azure.com/devops. How to do an efficient DevOps, or effectively doing a DevOps or something, and please go through that. The other link as well, Rashmita, where the content is available for people to take back. Rashmita, you there?
Yes, Vivek.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want me to share it?
Yeah, the where people can go back and get the
Yeah,
content.
sure.
I think it's ak.ms/reactor chicken.
Yeah, I'm just sharing it again. I've already shared in the Q&A section, so probably I'll just, share it one more time. Give me 1 minute.
Yes, definitely. I'll share that book. I think it's an amazing book. Um, just give me a minute. I'm just sharing that.
In the meantime, if you have any questions, you can, write to us or unmute and you can ask Vivek. We have a couple of more minutes before we end the session, so please feel free to drop your questions or unmute and ask us.
Oops, that book is missing from the link. Let me find that book and share it across. Otherwise, there's one more book. Share that one. Um, just a minute, yeah. I'm not finding that book. Trying to get that for you people. I'll try and share it. I'll have to go and figure that out. It was there in that link, but I could not find that link. Sorry. Let me share that in my Twitter. Just after this session, I'll try and figure that out where that book is. Any more questions apart from the book? I'll definitely share. You know. Yeah, that's the link. aka.ms/DevOps. No, not aka.ms, just azure.com/DevOps. No, that is the enterprise report. There was supposed to be a book there, but let me figure that out. Da, da, da. This documentation, ebooks. Any more questions? I'll get it done. I'll get the book. Don't worry. I'll share it in my Twitter. No worries. That's not the one. It's an enterprise report. That's not the book. Um, oh, my Twitter handle is this. Any more questions, or else we can break for the day? Thank you all, and I'll definitely share that book. And please go to the other link, get yourself the content, and also please uh, give us a survey so that take this survey, give us feedback so that we can improve these sessions for you. And by the way, we have amazing sessions lined up in June, and in July we are planning an amazing series for GitHub Actions. Again, it is DevOps, but it is amazing and new. How you can use GitHub directly from GitHub, how you can integrate into different set of services and drive conversations. It's going to be a series and a lot of in-depth conversations like demos like these with obviously we will go through the Kubernetes containers, scanning containers before deploying and all those things. Let's do that. Yeah, yeah, please ask questions. If you have questions, don't worry. I mean, I'm not going anywhere.